Thank you very much, Kylie, for the kind introduction. First, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, where I'm based, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and future. And thank you to all of you for being here today. But first, why are we actually here? Before we start, let's remind ourselves of what this Sustainable Finance Forum is all about. We're exploring the role of finance in delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals in order to drive ambitious action on those goals. Ambitious action. So gathered here today in cyberspace are leaders in business, in government, civil society, and academia. And together, we can make a difference. The next 2 days aim to help all of us figure out how best to do that. There are some great topics and guest speakers. And as we're listening to them and learning and thinking, my challenge to myself and each of you is, what ambitious actions will I take away from this? With that in mind, let's start with the basics. What are the SDGs? For those of us not working in this area all the time, the acronyms can get confusing. ESG, SDGs, TCFD, SASB, GRI, CDP. I'll just touch briefly on the SDGs and ESG. So the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are at the heart of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. There are 17 goals, and they are an urgent call for action by all countries in a global partnership. The goals are wide-ranging and ambitious. They recognise that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. There is a lot to do. Next to ESG. Throughout much of the 20th century, the primary focus for most companies was their financial bottom line. However, over the last 20 years or so, there's been a growing view that businesses should also be focused on a number of non-financial considerations: the environment, social, and corporate governance. So whereas the SDGs are a very wide-ranging set of goals aiming to engage governments, ESG has typically been the domain of the investment community. It grew out of the emergence of so-called responsible investors. However, the core assumption in the past was still that ethically directed investments were likely to reduce financial gains. And as a markets person at heart, one of the things I'm really delighted to see is the growing body of evidence that paying attention to ESG factors could actually improve financial performance. It's really exciting to see that more and more companies are using the SDGs as a framework for their sustainability work and communication. In 2019, over 70% of the ASX 200 were using at least some of the principles of integrated reporting, including 20% using the SDG framework. I suspect that this year's annual reports will see significant further uptake. Using a globally recognised framework, such as the SDGs, to convey how a company is pursuing a sustainable future is a really positive development for the global economy. ASX supports the voluntary adoption of these approaches. And I'm here representing ASX today, and we're really delighted to be sponsoring this conference, along with the Global Compact Network Australia, GCNA, and the Australian Council of Superannuation Investors, ACSI. I would like to thank the core working group who worked so hard to make this conference possible: Corinne and Nia from GCNA, Nathan from ACSI, and John from ASX. As an ASX representative, I wear two hats. The first is as the operator of many parts of Australia's financial markets. ASX provides trading, clearing and settlements all the way through to payments, data and technology. And it's the listing venue for over 2,000 listed companies. The second hat is as a listed company in our own right, thinking about ESG and the Sustainable Development Goals in respect of our own business and stakeholders. ASX is a marketplace which enables capital to be allocated and risk to be assessed and priced. By providing investors and traders with the tools to do these jobs accurately, ASX plays an important role in supporting an orderly transition to a low carbon economy. In 2019, the ASX Corporate Governance Council endorsed the TCFD framework as a best practice disclosure for those companies that have a material exposure to climate change risks. This endorsement of TCFD has two important outcomes. For companies, it encourages self-assessment of their climate change exposure. Both physical risks and transition risks can have significant implications for companies' ability to create or maintain long-term value. For investors, these standardized disclosures allow meaningful comparison across companies and sectors, influencing the allocation of capital towards a sustainable future. In addition, Principle 3 of the corporate governance principles is that a company should instill a culture of acting lawfully, ethically, and responsibly. Tomorrow, the chair of the Corporate Governance Council, Elizabeth Johnson, will discuss the ever-growing importance of the S in ESG, and especially culture. So don't miss that. ASX's products and services support many other aspects of a sustainable economy, and ASX is also part of the Sustainable Stock Exchanges initiative. For example, ASX is enabling large-scale investment in renewable energy and the electrification of energy. How? That's through the electricity futures markets for Australia and New Zealand, which provide the forward price transparency that's needed to enable investment and the risk management tools that are needed by generators and retailers. We support the issuance of green bonds and are working to increase the visibility of that market. And we're working to set up transparent, widely accessible trading and clearing for carbon units and carbon futures. I'll turn to our efforts as a listed company in our own right. As a highly regulated entity, as you'd expect, corporate governance has always been a very strong focus for ASX. We're also an employer with awards for our achievements in diversity. The ASX is on its own sustainability journey, looking at how we can improve our climate change reporting. Because while ASX may not have a material exposure to climate change, we do see the importance of leading by example. So we're here today as the Sustainable Finance Forum, with incredibly powerful forces at play like ESG investing, which is routing capital towards a sustainable future. It's already inspiring to see what the finance industry has been able to achieve. Now, let's step it up again by identifying those ambitious actions each one of us will take away today to move us even further towards these crucial Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.